In a bright hospital hallway, where sterile white lights hummed and the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and fear, a young woman in a wheelchair clenched her trembling fingers against her knees as tears streamed down her face. Her breaths came sharp and broken, her eyes wide in silent panic. She couldn't hear the alarms blaring in the background. She couldn't hear the desperate footsteps of doctors passing by. She couldn't hear the booming voice of the man who had just stormed in through the automated doors. All she felt was the weight of hopelessness crushing her chest. She was deaf. She was alone. And she believed there was no reason left to keep fighting. Just seconds earlier, she had tried to throw herself from the hospital balcony. The only thing that stopped her was a nurse, a young, exhausted single father, who had grabbed her at the last second. Now, he crouched in front of her, his eyes begging her to stay alive as his hands moved in shaky sign language. He wasn't fluent, but he tried. She blinked through her tears, unable to understand everything yet understanding enough. He didn't want to lose her. If you are watching this and believe that hope, compassion, and second chances can change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Diaries. Your support reminds the world that love still exists. Her name was Aria Vernum, daughter of one of the richest businessmen in the city. Her family owned skyscrapers and influence, but no amount of wealth could buy her a voice, or her hearing. She grew up behind tall fences, surrounded by doctors and speech therapists who viewed her silence as something to fix instead of something to understand. Locked tight in a world that rarely slowed down to communicate with her, Aria was treated not as someone living differently, but someone broken. Every failed surgery, every disappointed look from her father, every cold, lonely room in the mansion built with gold and emptiness, they buried her deeper into isolation. Her father, Richard Vernum, stood now in disbelief near the door as the nurse shielded his daughter with his presence alone. Richard's shoes were polished, his suit immaculate, but his heart was fraying at every seam. Losing his wife to illness had hardened him into a man of control and power, emotions tucked away like unwelcome guests. He tried to protect Aria from the world, yet unknowingly imprisoned her within walls built from his fears. His grief had kept him distant, and she had grown to assume that silence was all she was worth. The nurse's name was Jace Carter, a man in blue scrubs whose tired eyes revealed nights without sleep and worries stitched into his skin. He was the complete opposite of Richard. He owned nothing expensive except love. Love for his little daughter, Ava. A bright child with pigtails and a sparkle that kept Jace alive even when bills piled high and the world pushed him around. Jace had been raising Ava alone since his wife walked out, unable to handle the hardships of parenting a child with a chronic heart condition. Money was always scarce. Fear was always near. Yet Jace woke up every day determined to save others while struggling desperately to save his own small family. The moment he had seen Aria leaning over the railing earlier, something inside him shattered. He recognized the look in her eyes, that haunting emptiness. He had felt it himself during nights when Ava gasped for breath and hospitals turned him away because his insurance wasn't good enough. That look meant someone had stopped believing they mattered. Now Jace refused to let Aria slip into darkness. The hospital room felt overwhelming with Richard's anger rising, doctors whispering blame, machines blinking warnings. Aria flinched even without hearing. Years of reacting to fear had conditioned her to shrink, to disappear. Her tears rolled faster as she stared at the floor, ashamed that she still existed. Jace gently reached out and lifted her chin so their eyes met. His hands formed a quiet promise, slow, imperfect signs that told her she wasn't a burden, she wasn't alone, he would help her. She couldn't explain why she believed him more than anyone else in her lifetime, but she did. For the first time in forever, she felt someone saw her not as damaged but as human. Richard stood helpless, unsure how to speak to his own daughter. He had spent years offering her every luxury except his presence. The truth weighed heavily, all his money had bought her comfort but stolen her confidence. All his protection had denied her freedom. And now he feared he had lost her forever. The days that followed tested all three of them. Arya remained in the hospital under watch, and Jace took it upon himself to visit whenever he could, between patient rounds, during his rare moments of rest, even when exhaustion begged him to collapse. He introduced her to simple things others took for granted, stepping outside to feel sunlight warming her skin, watching leaves dance in the wind, and learning sign language at a pace that matched her heart instead of rushing her into frustration. And Ava, small, sweet Ava, became Arya's first real friend. The little girl didn't speak much, because illness often left her breathless, but she and Arya communicated through smiles, drawings, and the silent understanding of those who've seen pain too young. Arya learned that Jace had dreams too, dreams he had buried beneath survival. He once wanted to become a doctor, not just a nurse, but paused his studies because Ava's care needed him more. He wasn't angry about what life took from him. He was only grateful for what he still had. Jace slowly discovered the artistic fire in Arya, something she had never dared show anyone. She loved to paint emotions she couldn't verbalize, a canvas of storms and stars and unspoken memories. He encouraged her, proudly hanging her artwork beside Ava's crayon drawings. In those peaceful moments, she began to believe she deserved to exist. But life rarely allows healing without a test. One morning, Ava collapsed while playing by Arya's bedside. Panic erupted. Doctors rushed her away as Jace clutched the hallway rail, his body trembling violently. A voice inside him screamed that hope was cruel, because whenever he let himself breathe, life suffocated him again. Arya understood that agony too well, the terror of losing the one person who keeps you alive. She couldn't hear the medical codes shouted across the ward, but she felt the dread sinking into Jace's bones. Richard stood nearby, witnessing Jace's entire world falling apart in seconds. Something changed inside the wealthy businessman then. He saw a man who would give everything he had, and everything he didn't, just to keep his daughter safe. He saw a father whose love cost more than money ever could. Richard realized the depth of failure he had lived in. He had millions but gave so little of himself. With trembling hands, he placed his palm on Jace's shoulder, a gesture more powerful than any business negotiation he'd ever completed. He promised silently that Ava would not suffer due to financial barriers. He would fund her treatment, ensure she got the best care imaginable. Jace broke into tears, overwhelmed and disbelieving. As days passed, Ava's condition stabilized. The gratitude between Jace and Richard grew into mutual respect. Arya found solace watching two fathers transform, one learning how to give love, the other learning how to accept help. Arya's healing blossomed through connection. She reclaimed control of her life, attending counseling, engaging in therapy, and creating art that spoke louder than words. With Richard by her side, trying earnestly to learn sign language, their relationship mended slowly, beautifully. She wasn't a prisoner of silence anymore. She was a storyteller, through color, through expression, through hope. And through Jace. He was the first to believe she was strong enough to fight. He was the first to whisper in a way she could feel, "I'll help you." If this story has touched your heart so far, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing to Kindness Diaries to support more inspiring stories like this. Before the final emotional closing moment, we kindly request viewers to comment, what part of Arya's journey moved you the most? Months later, under a golden afternoon sky in the hospital garden, Arya stood without her wheelchair for the first time since her darkest day. Jace held Ava's hand while Richard stood on Arya's other side, eyes misty with pride. Arya raised a paintbrush to a blank mural the hospital wall had gifted her to fill. Every stroke represented a life reclaimed. She painted a sun breaking through storm clouds. She painted a girl once drowning in silence rising toward warmth. She painted two fathers, one built from strength, one learning softness, both holding her up when she couldn't stand alone. Arya knew now that disability was not a void. It was a different rhythm of life, one that some could hear only with their hearts. She didn't need to hear the world to belong to it. She only needed someone to believe her existence mattered.